Hey everybody, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to Beekeeping for Newbies. Today is going to be Bees in the News, episode 18. Thank you for joining us. I always appreciate that. And I know I didn't do my regular intro there, but hopefully you won't hold it against me. So today we got a couple of fun articles coming to us. One of them is going to be out of Malta. We also have another one coming to us out of the UK. We have Pennsylvania, I believe it's Penn State again. We got British Columbia, Canada, and Australia, and that should wrap us up. So my apologies on the delay today. I guess it must have been Labor Day holiday, and I just completely lost track of days, and I was thinking it was Tuesday all day. But we're going to get it done, and hopefully you guys can forgive me for my mistake here. Okay, we're going to jump right in. This is coming to us out of Malta. Colony of invasive red dwarf honeybees found for first time in Europe. Discovery of Apis florea in Malta raises fears of devastating impact on native bee populations. Now, before I read this article, the image they show is like a swarm kind of hanging off of a branch, and they're a really kind of cool looking color. They've got white, black, red. It's a really neat, interesting looking color. Like I said, the articles, the links to all these articles are going to be posted on the Beekeeping for Newbies webpage. You can go check it out, but they're pretty cool looking. The red dwarf honeybee has established a colony in Europe for the first time, scientists have found. The bee Apis florea is native to Asia, and its discovery has raised alarm among local beekeepers and conservationists who fear the potentially devastating impact on native bee populations. It is concerning that Apis florea has been found in Malta, said Dave Goulson, a professor of biology at the University of Sussex, who was not involved in the research. Apis florea is likely to compete for pollen and nectar with our native pollinators, a group of insects that are already in decline. It is also very likely that these bees will carry multiple diseases which European bees may have little resistance to. Previous reports show the red dwarf species has slowly expanded its territory from Asia to the Middle East and Northeast Africa, but until now it has never been reported in Europe. So, interesting article, worth the read as always. Moving on to the next one. And this is the one coming to us from the BBC. Why air pollution bamboozles pollinating bees. Contaminated air is not only bad for us, it can also disrupt bees' highly attuned senses for finding flowers. In the summers of 2018 and 2019, ecologist James Riles and his colleagues would go out to a field near Reading in southern England to stare at the insects buzzing around black mustard plants. Each time a bee, hoverfly, moth, butterfly, or other insect tried to get at the pollen or nectar in the small yellow flowers, they'd make a note. It was part of an unusual experiment. Some patches of mustard plants were surrounded by pipes that released ozone and nitrogen oxides, polluting gases produced around power plants and conventional cars. Other plots had pipes releasing normal air. The result startled the scientists. Plants smothered by pollutants were visited by up to 70% fewer insects overall, and their flowers received 90% fewer visits compared with those in unpolluted plots. The concentrations of pollutants were well below what U.S. regulators consider safe. We didn't expect it to be quite as dramatic as that, says study co-author Robbie Gerling, an entomologist at the University of Southern Queensland in Australia and a visiting professor at the University of Reading. A growing body of research suggests that pollution can disrupt insect attraction to plants at a time when many insect populations are already suffering deep declines due to agricultural chemicals, habitat loss, and other factors. Around 75% of wildflowering plants and around 35% of food crops rely on animals to move pollen around so that plants can fertilize one another and form seeds. Even the black mustard plants used in the experiment, which can self-fertilize, exhibit a drop of 14 to 31% in successful pollination as measured by the number of seed pods, seeds per pod, and seed pod weight from plants engulfed by dirty air. Anyway, kind of interesting article. There's more to it, as always, but we'll let you all dive as deep as you'd like with that one. Okay, so this one's kind of interesting here, coming to us out of British Columbia, Canada. Beekeepers concerned over BC's city proposed hive restrictions. So the subtitle under this main title doesn't read very clearly, but I'll read it exactly as it's written. Draft rules require hives to be kept 7.5 meters from property's edge, large lot sizes. Not sure exactly what that means, but we'll dive into the article here. Beekeepers in Revelstoke, BC are concerned that they may feel the sting of the law after the city introduced a draft update to its bylaws restricting the size of property on which hives can be kept. The city, about 155 kilometers east of Kamloops, released a 265-page draft update to its zoning bylaws this spring. It includes a section on beekeeping, something that wasn't covered in the past. Ron Glave, who owns Be Kind Honeybees, says that the way the rules are written shows a lack of understanding from the city toward honeybees. They are industrious. They're focused on collecting for the hive, and they're really gentle and easy to work with, he says. Now Glave and other beekeepers are worried they won't be able to legally keep their bees due to restrictions on where they can be kept. The proposed rules would not allow anyone who lives on a lot smaller than 4,000 square meters, 43,056 square feet, to keep bees. We're hoping that's a typo, Glave said, adding that lot size is 10 times bigger than that of the average city lot in Revelstoke. The rules further state hives have to be in backyards, 7.5 meters from the edge of the property. That's just not realistic for the way most people keep bees, Glave said, with many keeping their hives on top of carports and garages and in their front yards or backyards. Hobbyists also have electric fences or boards with nails sticking out of them to keep bears away. Glave, who started as a hobbyist in 2013, says he uses best practices. I really tried to promote responsible beekeeping, knowing we didn't have a bee bylaw, he said. John Hordick, another hobbyist who keeps hives enclosed in an electric fence in his front yard, said he and his neighbors have noticed an improvement in their gardens and fruit trees since we got the honeybees 3 summers ago. Hobbyists Melissa Hemphill, Nora Hughes, and Tyler and Susie Cathell agreed. The Cathells kept hives on the roof of their carport. It's like we have tens of thousands of little bee pets, especially when you're building a big garden, Susie Cathell said. You want things to be really pollinating. Anyway, a little bit more to the article, but you would think that if they want to implement something like this, they would put some kind of like a request for information, something out to the public to say, hey, we'd like to have a discussion to talk about this. Can you guys come in? You know, anybody who knows anything about bees, come in and talk to us a little bit. Give us your 2 cents. Tell us what's important, what's not important. But as typical government, they just do whatever they want to do, and then everybody else has to figure out how they're going to work around it. So what can you do? Okay, moving on here to Australia. It's inevitable. Australian beekeepers brace for national spread of varroa mite. Varroa destructor mites were introduced to Australia 2 years ago and are expected to kill most wild European honeybees in the next 5 years. 2 years after the exotic pest Varroa destructor was detected in sentinel hives at the port of Newcastle and began spreading through New South Wales, beekeepers in other states are bracing for the pest's inevitable arrival. It's not only commercial beekeepers in the firing line. An estimated 47,000 registered recreational beekeepers will be forced to decide whether they can continue their hobby. Also at stake are commercial fruit crops such as apples, pears, cherries, backyard fruit and vegetable gardens, and native forests, which rely on feral honeybees for free pollination. Despite triggering the biggest multi-agency plant biosecurity response in Australian history at a cost of $132 million and with an estimated 30,000 hives destroyed during the first year, authorities gave up the fight to eradicate the mite 12 months ago. Earlier this year, efforts shifted to managing the parasitic mite, which can weaken hives, kill larvae, and spread deadly viruses. It is expected to wipe out most wild European honeybees over the next 5 years. So I skimmed through the rest of the article. There wasn't really a whole lot of new information. I still think it's important that the information in general get out to everybody everywhere, particularly in Australia, because they're one of the later locations and places to start getting varroa and having to deal with them. I just look back. I go back to those early years where I just had that, it's not going to happen to me mindset. And a lot of the losses came from varroa, and it's just, you got to deal with it. You got to have a plan. You got to have some, method, system, something in place to address it. And I think, unfortunately, these folks out here, a lot of them are going to learn the hard way, but fingers crossed, we'll see what happens for them here. Okay, and moving on to the final article of the day. This is coming to us out of Penn State, Pennsylvania in the U.S. Multiple new bee species found in Pennsylvania, creating positive buzz. Over recent years, there's been a buzz about a decline in bee population nationwide, but a recent study conducted by Pennsylvania State University showed an abundance of bees and multiple new bee species in Pennsylvania. The university recruited 26 community participants who were mostly master gardeners. They received extensive training from Penn State experts to collect bees throughout Pennsylvania. The goal of the study was to document bee biodiversity and its abundance. Between August 2021 and December of 2022, the participants collected 9,062 bees, including 235 bee species through the use of blue vein traps, bulb traps, and netting. The bees found were identified to species, stored in museum collections, and the data was added to public databases. New species of bees that were discovered in the state include Adrena duplicata, the mining bee, Nomada banksiav, cuckoo bee, and I probably blew that pronunciation, sorry about that, Hylaeus punctatus, and 5 more listed in the research findings. With the amount of bees found, the study resulted in 662 county records and 7 state records. More than 80% of flowering plants rely on pollinators like bees to produce. Pennsylvania Agricultural Secretary Russell Redding said in a Penn State press release, apples, peaches, berries, pumpkins, grapes, and many other high-value Pennsylvania crops depend on bees, as does our 4.1 billion nursery and landscaping industry. In so many of our communities, our jobs and livelihoods revolve around producing foods that rely on pollination. The data in this report illustrate the value of citizen science in making sure we can protect pollinators and produce food in the future. While the participants were collecting data, researchers compared the data to users on the iNaturalist app, a photo-based app documenting bee biodiversity. A study conducted by the Annals of the Entomological Society of America found that Penn State's selected volunteers were more than twice as effective at documenting bee biodiversity and documented over twice as much biodiversity than users on iNaturalist. This study demonstrates the value of involving highly trained community scientists in collections-based research, said Margarita Lopez Uribe, the Lorenzo Langstroth Early Career Associate Professor of Entomology and Extension Specialist of Pollinator Health at Penn State. I try to fit that on the business card. It also revealed some of the limitations of photography-based monitoring, which is still a useful tool for scientists, but doesn't capture the full picture of biodiversity. Anyway, I thought that was pretty interesting. It's kind of cool. I mean, with all the negative, Debbie Downer, bad news that we always have in the bee world, it's kind of nice to have something positive for a change. Well, everybody, that's all that I've got for you today on this episode of Bees in the News. I hope you're all doing well, you're staying out of trouble, and there's a whole lot going on. I think right now we are on day 4 of our beekeeping tips of the day on YouTube, so I'm doing that through the entire month of September, so please check us out over there on YouTube. And as always, you can feel free to reach out, Jeff, at beekeepingfornewbies.com. It's NEWBEES.com. Outside of that, take care, be kind to one another, and remember that I love you, and there's nothing you can do about it. Take care.